All right, so today we're in 8.5, learning about slope-intercept form. The most important thing about the lesson is that you know what slope-intercept form is and what the variables represent. So far in this chapter, we've learned how to manipulate our x and y values, right? We've used domain values for x and y in our tables. What's our standard domain set? -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. We create tables, they make ordered pairs, and we graph. Or we substitute 0 for the variable we're not solving for, and we use our intercepts to graph. Now, today, we're specifically looking at the equation in slope-intercept form, where M stands for slope, and B is the y-intercept. So you need to know where they are placed in the equation, and guess what? We can graph it just based on the equation. We don't need a table, we don't need intercepts, we can just use the equation, the information the equation gives us to graph it. And that's what we're doing today. All right, so you need to write down the items that are highlighted. Okay, example 1, identifying slope and y-intercept. So here, good news, we're not graphing anything. All we're doing is identifying the slope and y-intercept by the slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. This is our go-to. This is our basis for determining those values. So my m value is the coefficient that's attached to my x variable. So let's look at the very first equation. What is the coefficient in front of x? 1. So m equals 1. And then the very last number, including the sign in the equation, is my slope, or is my y-intercept, which I use a variable b. b is -4. And that's all I do. Now, second one is a little trickier because is this in slope-intercept form? No. No. So I first have to write it in slope-intercept form, then I can find m and b. Go ahead and write this equation in slope-intercept form. So again, we've got to solve for y. We got to get y by itself, so we subtract 3x first, and then we divide everything by 5. Okay, so did everybody get this for their slope-intercept form? Did you get that? Y equals -3/5 x plus 2. Did you get it? Nod? Yes? Okay, so now I can identify that my slope is the number attached to my x, so my slope is what? M equals what? -3/5. And b equals the number, last number in the equation, which is 2. And that's it. M equals -3/5, b equals 2. It's really easy. All right, so now let's do the third one. Now on the third one, I have 3y equals 4x plus 12. So it's almost done. What do I just have to do to every term in the equation? Divide everything by 3. Go ahead and write it in slope-intercept form, and then identify the slope and the y-intercept. All right, so we divide everything by 3. Y equals 4/3 x plus 4. So now I can clearly see that m is what? 4/3. And b is 4. So now, guys, I can take these values and I can graph my line just from these two values. That's it. Don't need a table. Don't have to substitute my zeros for my intercepts. I can use these two values. That's it. So that's what we're looking at in example 2. In example 2, I want you to help me. What is my slope? M equals what? -2/3. B equals what? 4. So now, which is what we just did in example 1, now I'm going to use these values to graph the line. I always start with my y-intercept. Whatever value my b value is, that's where I plot my point on the y-axis. You don't have to do this one yet. I just want you to watch. Y value of 4. Now you're going to use your slope. It's important that you realize that if it's negative, it means your rise is negative. It means you go down from that point. So because my rise is -2, I start at this point and I go down 2 spaces on the y-axis. I go down 2 and I go over 3 and I plot my point here. All right, and you don't need those lines. We're going to erase them here and come back over here and draw our arrow, and we're done. That's how we graph the equation using slope-intercept form. All right, think you can do a couple?
Yes.
We're going to do these 3. All right, I want to help you out. Well, I want to see who can get this one. All right, this one's a little goofy. We haven't talked about that. Let's see who can get it, and then we're going to graph all 3 of these equations. So we'll have 3 graphs total on our graph paper from today's lesson. On the very first one, what's our slope? What's our slope? I'm pointing to it. What's m? M equals -1. And b equals 1. All right, now what about this one up here? Y equals 4x. Okay, well, what's my m value?
4.
M equals 4. What's my b value?
0.
0. 0. So that's my y-intercept on that graph is just 0. Are y'all still working on the third one?
Yep.
All right, so we subtract 3x from both sides, and we get -2y equals -3x plus 6, divide, and y equals 3 over 2x minus 3. So what's my m value? M value is 3 over 2. B value is -3. All right, so guys, for each one of these, 1, 2, 3, this is all we need to graph. All right, so we're going to go over here to our graphs. Have we set them up yet?
Oh, no.
All right, I'm gonna kind of walk you through the first one. So what did I tell you is the very first point that you're going to make? How do I know where to start? I have no tables. I have no ordered pairs. How do I know where to start for this one? My b value, whatever number is my b value, I plot the point on the y-axis. All right, so I come over here and I plot it right on a 1. Now, what was my slope for that equation?
-1 over 1.
-1, and remember, when it's a whole number, I can put it over 1. So if it's negative, I start at this point at my y-intercept. Do I go up 1 or down 1 from that point?
Down.
I go down 1 because it's negative, over 1, plot my point, draw my line, and I'm done. So I plot my y-intercept and I follow my slope for my next point, draw my line, done. Arrows through both ends. On the second one, what was our y-intercept? What was it, guys? 0. So I plot my point at 0. And what was our slope? Oh, sorry. What was our slope? What was our slope? 4 over 1. Okay, so we always know that it's over 1. So we rise 4, run 1, plot our point here. We went up 1, 2, 3, 4, over 1, plot our point. And then draw our line. What'd you say? It's a steep slope?
Yeah.
Sure is.
I wouldn't be right when it's right back up that slope.
Hey, if you're just looking at the slope, is that positive or negative?
Positive.
It's positive, and guess what? It was positive over in your equation, too. So it should match up. All right, what about the third one? Are y'all done with the third one yet?
No.
Okay, so on the third one, what was our y-intercept? Remind me. What was our y-intercept?
-3.
-3. Did you plot your point on -3? Did you do that? Hey, hello?
Yes.
Hello, did you do that? Okay, now what do you do for your slope? What did you rise?
3.
Rise 3, run 2, plot your point, draw your line. Did you get it?
Yep.
Okay, so this, guys, is probably the most important concept of the lesson, is using your slope and your y-intercept to graph the line. Okay, so this is pretty much half of your homework assignment. The other half of your homework assignment deals with parallel and perpendicular lines. All right, parallel and perpendicular lines. We know that parallel lines, what do we know about parallel lines? They never intersect. So think about it in terms of slope. Two parallel lines have to have the exact same slope in order to never intersect, right? If it just has a little bit of a different slope, eventually they will intersect. So here's what you need to know about parallel lines. For a parallel, they'll have the same slope as the original equation. For perpendicular, and I'm just going to say perpendicular. All right, for perpendicular, I'm going to abbreviate. It's going to be the negative reciprocal. And you'll see more of what I'm talking about in just a sec. Oh, what is a reciprocal? That's where you flip the fraction. Very good. Okay, so the parallel line, the second line, will have the same slope if it's parallel. If it's perpendicular, it'll be the negative reciprocal. We'll talk about that more in just a sec. All right, so this is what I'm looking at. I want you to write down this equation. 4x plus 3y equals negative 18. 4x plus 3y equals negative 18. Here's what your directions are going to say. Find the slope of a line that has a given relationship. Okay, so I've got to write this in slope-intercept form. Go ahead and write this equation in slope-intercept form. Then we're going to find the slope of its parallel line and the slope of its perpendicular line. Okay, so it's going to be y equals what? Yes, negative 4 over 3x minus 6. So here's what my rule says. For the parallel line, it's the exact slope that's in your equation. So if it's negative 4 over 3, the parallel slope, negative 4 over 3. For the perpendicular line, you're going to flip it. So what is the reciprocal of the fraction? 3/4. But if I make it the negative reciprocal, that's a double negative, which changes to positive. 3 over 4. So you think about it this way. It's the opposite sign. So it's literally opposite and then opposite sign. Okay, so opposite sign and flip it, and then that's it. So for these questions on your homework, you're not graphing anything. All you're doing is telling me this is the parallel, which is the exact same slope as your equation, and then your perpendicular is the negative reciprocal. Flip it, and then it's the opposite sign. If you understand that, that's everything you need to know for 8.5.